Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Representatives Baum, Camper, Freeman, Gant, Hawk, Hazelwood, Lynn, Ogles, Todd, Whitson, Williams, Wendell, Chairman Hicks.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I would like to call the Finance, Ways and Means Subcommittee to order for April the 19th, 2022. Members, any announcements or personal orders? Seeing none. Couple announcements before we do get started. The legislative amendment to the budget will be on the General Assembly website and also on dashboard. So all those that made that mad dash, don't worry if you didn't get one. You can jump online and see those. Also, the calendar, the appropriations calendar, will be up tomorrow in the morning at 9 a.m. in full finance. So again, it will be, and I'll make this announcement again once we get to calendar 2, but appropriations calendar will be taken up tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. as well as calendar 2. All right. With that said, members, we're going to begin with the appropriations calendar. It's going to be item number 1. It's going to be House Bill 2882 by Chairlady Hazelwood. You have a motion and a second. You are recognized on House Bill 2882.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the appropriations bill that everybody has been waiting with bated breath for, and we're here to discuss it. There are some amendments that need to go on it.
All right, let's go ahead and get these amendments taken care of and out of the way. Again, there's 6 amendments that were filed onto this bill. First, we're going to go with Amendment Drafting Code. This is by Chairlady Hazelwood, 017648. Do we have a motion second? We got a motion second. You're recognized on the amendment.
This is just a stripper amendment, which would allow us to reset the budget if we needed to do so.
All right, thank you very much for this description. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on Amendment 017648 onto House Bill 2882. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're back on the bill as amended, which brings us to amendment number 2. Amendment number 2.
Amendment number 2, drafting code 013999.
That is correct. Again, that's amendment 013999. We have a motion and a second. You're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the administration's amendment to the appropriations bill. Again, it has been out there for the public and members to view for quite some time.
All right. Thank you, Chair Lady. Members, you've heard the description. Any discussion on 013999? Seeing none, we're now voting on putting the amendment onto House Bill 2882. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're back on the bill as amended. That brings us to amendment number 3. Amendment number 3 is going to be 014000.
That's correct, and that is the legislative budget.
All right, you have a motion and a second. Members, you heard the description. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on amendment 014000 onto House Bill 2882. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're back on the bill as amended. All right, that brings us to item number 4. It's going to be amendment. All right, that's going to move us to amendment number 4. It's going to be filed by Representative Ogles. That's going to be drafting code. Representative Ogles, where are you? Over there you are. Okay, I see you. Representative Ogles, drafting code that I have is 017745. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairman. I would like a roll call on this amendment.
Okay, you have a motion and a second. You're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman. Members of committee. As you all know, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. This amendment would fund House Bill 1640, which would remove probation from a Class B felony of rape if the person is convicted of that felony. And as most of you know from the social media post, 1 in 5 women are raped sometime in their lifetime, 1 in 3 from an intimate partner. 67.5% of rapes are unreported, and only 5% of the rapes in college are reported. It's a very serious issue, and I hope that we would not allow judges to allow people that are convicted of a Class B felony to receive probation and not serve any time in jail. So that amendment would fund this bill. And thank you, members. I will take any questions.
All right. Thank you, Representative Ogles. Any discussion, members, on Amendment 017745? Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you. First of all, I want to just say thanks to Representative Ogles. I don't think anyone has filed as many bills on one subject matter in their short tenure as you have on this one. And so your passion by this committee and members of the body is recognized. The challenge that I have, and I think my colleagues have as it relates to this is funding a change in TCA as it relates to the subject matter you said previously with one-time money instead of reoccurring money. So if we funded this, we would have local law enforcement judges who say, was this crime committed during this period of time? And so for that reason, as much as I appreciate the member and his passion about this topic, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to move this amendment to the table.
All right. That's a proper motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We do have a second. The tabling motion does cut off all debate except for that of the sponsor. So we will go back to Representative Ogles for any remarks.
Thank you, Chairman. The reason the piece of legislation was drafted the way it was, when it was first introduced, the way we're doing fiscal notes for crimes and criminal justice, you took the highest of 10 years, which is actually bonding future General Assemblies to incur costs that we have not done as long as I've been in the General Assembly. So this piece of legislation simply stripped it down to 1 year. We would fund it for 1 year. If this is not something the General Assembly would like to do next year, you can not extend it. You could let it sunset and not do it, but it does not cause any confusion for sentencing. It does not cause any confusion for the judiciary. It's simply written in a way that it affects 1 year, and we're funding it for 1 year. So I brought the fiscal note down to $56,000. I asked for that to be funded. I asked for passage on this piece of legislation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Ogles. And again, debate is cut off. So we will vote at this time. Again, a vote of aye will be to table. A vote of no is to not table. And with that said, you do want a roll call. All right, Madam Clerk, take the roll.
Chairman Baum.
Yes.
Chairman Baum votes aye. Leader Camper. Leader Camper votes no. Representative Freeman. Representative Freeman votes no. Leader Gant. Chairman Hawk.
Aye.
Chairman Hawk votes aye. Chairman Hazelwood.
Aye.
Chairman Hazelwood votes aye. Representative Lynn.
Aye.
Representative Lynn votes aye. Representative Ogles.
No.
Representative Ogles votes no. Chairman Todd.
No.
Chairman Todd votes no. Representative Whitson.
Aye.
Representative Whitson votes aye. Chairman Williams.
Aye.
Chairman Williams votes aye. Representative Wendell. Representative Wendell votes no. Chairman Hicks.
Aye.
Chairman Hicks votes aye. Seven ayes, 5 noes.
All right, and that motion to go on the table does pass. All right, next amendment will be amendment number 5, amendment by Representative Camper. That's going to be 017752. Leader Camper, is that correct?
It is correct, Mr. Chairman.
All right, do we have a motion and a second? I'm sorry, did we have a motion and a second?
Motion
Okay.
second. Mhm.
Didn't hear that. Sorry, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members, what this amendment would do is take $1.3 billion and appropriate it directly to the Department of Education, to where the state of Tennessee would be number one in terms of its per pupil funding for education. The money is available, notwithstanding what we're talking about with the other legislation that's moving right now. I just think this is an opportunity for us to take these funds, put it in education, and get our numbers up in terms of our children's level of achievement. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate a positive vote.
All right, members, you've heard the description of the amendment. Any discussion? Let's go to Chairman Baum.
Thank you, Chairman Hicks. Earlier today, this committee voted on and passed the administration's TISA bill, which will ultimately add over $1 billion to K through 12 education. Since we're adding $1 billion or more through that bill, I move to table this amendment.
All right. Members, you've heard the tabling motion, and I heard a second. The tabling motion does cut off all debate except for that of the sponsor, so we will go back to Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we could do both, actually. We can spend the money on TISA like was planned. We voted for it earlier. We could take 350 that we appropriated or plan to appropriate to go into TCRS and move it over to fund it. We could take the 751 time that the governor has already laid out and move it over, and we could even find some funding in other places, Mr. Chairman. So I believe we have the opportunity and the ability to do both. So I actually vote against the table motion.
All right. Thank you very much. Members, you've heard the motion to table. At this time, we will be voting for the tabling motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Motion is tabled. That brings us to item number 6. Item number 6 is going to be Amendment 017746, again by Representative Camper. We have a motion and a second.
Move to withdraw. I'm going to withdraw that one.
All right, you heard the request to withdraw. Any objection to the withdrawal? Seeing none, amendment is withdrawn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, members, we're back on the bill at this time as amended, and I will recognize Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill for fiscal year 22-23 for the state budget is $52.8 billion. For perspective, the total 21-22 state budget was 51.2. The initial budget for 21-22 was $42.6 billion. That was increased after the recognition of over $8 billion in federal COVID relief funding, which was realized after the passage of the budget. This FY 22-23 state budget includes federal funds appropriated through the American Rescue Plan, and we're going to get into more detail in just a minute, but this budget has a lot of very positive things in it, including a lot of tax relief funding for the citizens of Tennessee. But we will just kind of go through the appropriations schedule, take a walk through that, and then we'll look at some of the highlights that I've mentioned earlier. In the appropriation schedule, you'll see the first block is just talking about the available revenue, which was identified on the appropriations on the governor's AA. Then the second block is legislation passed by the General Assembly that provides additional revenue sources. And those dollars are identified there, either revenue or recognition of decreased expenditure from a bill sponsored by our own Leader Camper. The next section talks about the adjustments that the legislature is proposing to the governor's proposed budget. I'm not going to go through every one of those, but we'll talk about the larger ones. The Finance and Administration Capital Projects Fund, that is the additional $647 million. That's basically a result of the federal funding that has come in. We'll be taking some of those dollars to fund some of the things that we're talking about in here. There was $135 million that was set aside previously in COVID funding that has not been utilized. So we will be using those dollars again to fund some of the things that the legislature has deemed to be priorities. The governor's budget initially proposed $200 million for relocation of schools in flood zones. But there's a lot of discussion, a lot of movement on just exactly where those schools are, how many of them there are. There are just a lot of questions about that. So we are reallocating that funding. However, we're making sure there's $20 million that will be set aside in the budget for Waverly to make certain that those schools, they are kept whole when they replace those schools, and they're replaced outside the floodplain. The state dollars will be last dollar in after all insurance claims federal relief and any other opportunities for funding that are available. We are changing some non-recurring monies, disaster relief grants with non-recurring monies from recurring, and the Juneteenth state holiday, that is not going to be taking place, so that provides some funding. We are reducing the rural opportunity economic grants, but in the base budget, there was already an increase to those grants, and they have $227.8 million that are included in the base in the AA. So we are not in any shape, form, or fashion damaging those grants and the work that's done through them, which has been very positive. There's been a lot of conversation for a long time about the professional privilege tax, and we have made a concerted effort in this legislature to reduce those kinds of taxes. We are continuing that process consistent with what we've done in the past. With the hall tax, we did that gradually. With the professional privilege tax, we're doing the same thing, and consistent with what we have done with the professional privilege tax before, we are eliminating by category. So we are eliminating the professional privilege tax for physicians. That will, I think we have a shortage of physicians and medical personnel in the state, so we want to make sure that we're not doing anything that would in any way discourage or disincentivize those physicians for practicing in the state. The fast track grants, we are taking the recurring dollars that were set aside in the budget for fast track, but again, there's $85 million non-recurring already in the budget that will remain. We are looking at legislative amendments or appropriations amendments and legislative changes that I'll walk through some of those in more detail. The last block talks about the rainy day fund. The governor's budget had appropriated $50 million additionally to the rainy day fund. I know my friends sometimes call me Debbie Downer because I talk about the hard times that might be approaching, and we've been talking about that for a while. But a lot of people, much smarter than I am, are predicting recessions in upcoming years, starting as early as next year, 2023. So I think that we are just being prudent when we go to our savings account, just as we would for our families. I hope that we as personally are looking at what we might do to prepare for any kind of recession. With that in mind, we are moving an additional $200 million into the rainy day fund. That will bring the total of that fund up to $1.8 billion, which, yes, it's a lot of money, but again, our budget has grown significantly too. So we need to make sure that we can cover the costs that we need to should there be a dramatic downturn. And with that, I will just talk about some of the highlights, and then we will have any questions that you would like. I think one of the things that I'm most excited about, and I wish the media headline walking out of here would be, Tennessee legislature cuts taxes for Tennesseans by $300 million. They may choose another headline, but that would be the one that I would ask them to consider, because I think it's really important to the pocketbooks of Tennesseans. We're going to do that in a myriad of ways, and we're going to do it in a way that touches broadly across the state. First of all, for our farmers, who again are like many industries, are facing some incredible challenges with inflation and some other things that are happening. Our agricultural sales tax has been a bit of a hodgepodge for quite some time, where we have tweaked it here and there with an item or two, but we are going to make a major overhaul in the agricultural sales tax this year, and we're going to treat it like the manufacturing sales tax. That is the model that we're going to use, and that is, if you have your certificate from the Department of Revenue and whatever you're buying is used in the process of farming, then it's going to be sales tax will no longer apply. So that's a $3 million recurring charge cost there. We're also, and we can speak a long time about how it got to be applied, but we have been taxing the installation, repair, and creation of computer software for the past 3 years and or for some time, and we are going to remove that for 3 years. That's $6 million recurring. And we have a lot of businesses across the state who every month send in sales tax to the state. At one point in time, there was a fee that they were allowed to keep to pay them for doing that. That was cut out several years ago. We are not reestablishing the fee, but we are for 1 year, and this is Chairman Hawk has been working on this for quite some time. But for 1 year, we will give vendors a small compensation for submitting those fees to the state. It's $25 per location per month, the maximum of $300 if you have multiple locations across the state. So again, yeah, I think you can see by those numbers and that limited number of locations that this is really geared to our Tennessee small businesses. That's who we're trying to help with this. We have spent a lot of time talking about broadband. We've spent a lot of money, and the federal government has sent a lot of money to be spent on broadband. We have grants that are going to be, that are being awarded as we speak for broadband deployment. We have been sort of giving with one hand and taking with the other, because to get that broadband, those services out there, we have been charging sales tax on the materials, the installation for that deployment. We are going to forego that for 3 years, which our hope is and our aim is to incentivize that broadband deployment will go even faster. The period will match with the grant periods for those broadband grants that I mentioned earlier. We have sales tax exemption on gun safes for a year. We did that for 1 year. We're going to do that for another. And this is a new, something we have not done before, and it's a very large number and will hit every Tennessean who owns a car. We are going to remove the state license plate registration fees, the state portion, when you go to buy your tag from June 1 of this, from July for the fiscal year 22-23. When you buy your tag, you will not have to pay the state price. You will still have to pay if there's a local wheel tax or whatever local charges apply, but the state portion of the license tax for your personal vehicle, not for our friends with commercial vehicles, but for your personal vehicles, for your motorcycles, then those fees will be waived. We are going to exempt the tax on gold coins and the professional privilege tax I mentioned earlier. And already in the governor's budget, there was a sales tax holiday on food for the month of August. So that remains as well as our traditional sales tax holiday that we have done for a number of years. Mentioned earlier, these things were already in the budget, but we, again, in just the interest of good stewardship and good financial management, we'll be adding $300 million to reduce the OPEB liability for our state, which will help us in future years decrease the amount of recurring dollars that we have to put into that fund. And we are going to also add an additional $350 million to reduce the state's TCRS unfunded liability, which is small, but we want to make sure that we keep it that way so that we can tell our state employees without any doubt that when you retire, the funds are going to be there that you're expecting to retire on. So there's also, I mentioned the rainy day fund, some other highlights sort of by category. Law and safety, we are going to increase local governments have been requesting this for some time. We're going to increase the reimbursement rate for jails from $39 to $41 per day per inmate. We will provide funding for the Truth in Sentencing bill that will require violent offenders to serve 100% of their sentence. And we will, there are various other bills that we will also be funding. One of the other increases, in addition to the DAs that were funded in the base budget and the additional ones in the AA, we will be funding 11 new district attorneys across the state. That will allow for one new district attorney per judicial district if there is a proven need for that. And we have funding for 100 new troopers. In education, in addition to the TISA bill that we will be taking up next week and the work that's being done there, we're also expanding the Ben Ashley Opportunity Grants so that Tennessee residents enrolled at South College can avail themselves of that. And our own Chairman Baum has a bill that we're funding that will establish a uniform grading system for Tennessee that will make sure that our students, because our grading system has been 93 to 100 is an A, our surrounding states are 90 to 100 is an A. If you're applying to college, Harvard, for instance, and your GPA is based on the 93 to 100, it's going to be lower. If you made a 92, you're going to have a B versus your friend in Kentucky who made the same 92 and would have an A in his GPA. So we're going to make sure that our students in Tennessee or just have a level playing field in that regard. And we also are expanding the Tennessee Promise Scholarship, the Hope Scholarship. We're increasing that for the first time since 2008. And we're doing it on a graduated basis so that we're paying more for students in their junior and senior year. We want students to go to college, but more than that, we want them to complete college. So we think that will be an incentive to make that happen. With that, there's a lot of things in this budget, Mr. Chairman, but those are what I think are the highlights. Again, I think that what we put together here is a budget that reflects Tennessee values, a budget that we as a legislature can be proud to go home and tell our folks that that we voted for it and supported it. And these are the things that we're going to be doing to make Tennessee safer, to make Tennessee, make sure that all Tennesseans have opportunities for education, and to make sure that we are preparing as best we can for whatever might come economically down the road. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would entertain questions.
All right, thank you, Chair Lady Hazelwood. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 2882 as amended. Any discussion on the bill? Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chair Lady. I know you worked long and hard to put this budget together. We can see your work paying off. We know how vigilant you've been about being fiscally responsible. I do have a question on the adjustment to some of the governor's proposed budget. If you go to maybe halfway down, eliminate health and safety emergency and contingency fund.
Leader Camper,
Are you
those
with
were
me?
the COVID dollars that were set aside that were never expended. So we're just using those dollars.
And right beneath there, Mr. Chairman, it's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. You
yeah.
all can go back and
Okay,
forth.
and right beneath there, the floodplain reallocation and rebuilding fund. Can you talk about what went into the decision to eliminate those funds?
A number of things. That there were some philosophical concerns about the state getting involved in funding local schools. But I think the bigger concern was that identifying those schools, first of all, $200 million was not going to be able to replace every school in the state of Tennessee that is in a floodplain. And identifying those, it was kind of a moving target. It changed from time to time. So because of those reasons, we decided to reallocate those dollars. But as I mentioned, we are making sure that Waverly, which is, just as we have done in other areas of the state, Sevierville, for instance, with the fires a few years ago, we've made sure to take care of our locals when there is, that sort of incredible disaster that takes place. So we are retaining $20 million there to, as I said earlier, to make sure that the Waverly school system is made whole and those schools are replaced.
Okay, thank you. And right a little bit above there, there's an elimination of violent crime intervention grants. Uh, what, can you talk a little bit more about why we decided to not fund that? I thought this was where we had law enforcement that was going to be managing grants that they would be given to community organizations to help in prevention of crime. Is that the same pool of money? Or is this a different fund that you're talking about here?
No, that is, I believe we're talking about the same dollars. And again, I think the concern that many of us had as we talked through that and walked through that, there was a lack of specificity, if you will, about how that program would be administered, what the outcomes, how it would be measured, what the outcomes would be. And again, with just the lack of hard information that we felt we needed, there were other legislative priorities that we needed funding for. And so we determined that that was an allocation that we could perhaps best repurpose, best use in a different way.
One more, thank you, Mr. Chair. And at this point, you said that the rainy day fund is at 1.8 billion with the additional 200 million we're going to put in, correct?
That's correct.
And I know in the past you've been concerned about the number of days that this could, cover should, we end up in a recession. And can you talk a little bit more about what you're seeing to that end as to why we would put an additional 200 million in there?
Again, we're looking at a bigger base budget. So the cost of running the state, although a lot of these dollars are non-recurring, if we do have, what's the word, a negative economic outcome, then I think we need these dollars to just be certain that we can do the things that we need to do to take care of basic services and make sure that Tennesseans aren't harmed any more than they have to be in that sort of circumstance.
Thank you. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your patience. Appreciate you, Chair Lady, for my indulgence. This is really the first time since I've been here that I've seen this much appropriated for legislative initiatives. And I actually think it's a good idea because I've said in the past that we spend a lot of money on the executive branch accomplishing things and doing our mission and what we're required to do. There's also a lot of things that people need in their districts. There are things that the administration may not see as a priority that members might see as a priority. So if you look back over the various years, you will see that we may have had a small allocation of 10, 15, 20, maybe $30 million to accomplish, things that the legislature felt was important. So this is the first time I've seen such a large amount to do that. And so I think it's a good idea. But I also think it should have been a little bit more equity there in terms of the things that were funded with the legislative initiative. So I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chairman. But thank you for your work on the budget, and I look forward to the continued dialogue.
Thank you, Leader Camper. Members, further discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2882, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2882 moves to full finance. Now that brings us to item number 2 on our calendar. It's going to be House Bill 2883 by Chair Lady Hazelwood. You have a motion and a second. It looks like there are 2 timely filed amendments on this bill, plus there are 2 untimely filed. So let's take up the 2 timely first. The first is going to be Amendment Drafting Code 017000, and that you have a
Second.
motion to second. That's going to be handled by Leader Lambert, my understanding is. You have a motion to second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, it's just an amendment to this particular budget document. I think there's 4 different documents today, so.
All right. You've heard the description. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on Drafting Code 017000 to House Bill 2883. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Back on the bill as amended. That brings us to the second amendment that we're going to look at, which is Drafting Code 017500 05. That's going to be by Chair Lady Hazelwood. Do we have a motion and a second? You have a motion and a second. You're recognized, Chair Lady, on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment's just a very brief one, and all it does is exclude vending machines and micro markets from the sales tax holiday that we've talked about for the August sales tax holiday on groceries. The vending operators are supportive of this. It was very difficult last year when we did the sales tax holiday on groceries. It was very difficult for these folks in the micro markets and vending machines to accommodate that because the prices displayed for each individual item, and the vendors don't have the technology to change the price for items that they sell quickly. So it's very, again, we don't want, with our sales tax holiday and with the other things that we're doing, we're attempting to help Tennesseans and help Tennessee businesses. We don't want to do anything that makes it difficult for them. So this simply would exempt them, the vendors, again, for the vending and micro markets from the sales tax holiday.
All right, members, you've heard the description of Amendment 017505. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on the amendment to House Bill 2883. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're back on the bill as amended. That brings us to the third amendment we will look at. It is untimely filed. That is going to be, we're going to need a motion to actually consider. So is there a motion to consider the untimely file? It is yours, Leader Camper. Yes.
757.
017757.
Yeah.
You're recognized,
Yeah.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this had a drafting error in it, so I was going to move to withdraw it anyway.
All right. Without objection, amendment withdraw. All right, that brings us to the fourth amendment we're going to look at. It was also untimely filed. We will need a motion to consider this when Representative or
Motion.
Leader Camper, this is yours.
Yeah.
We have a motion and a second.
Yeah.
All right, any discussion on the motion to consider? Seeing none, we are voting on the motion to consider. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. No. The noes have it.
I had my mic on too. Mr.
Motion fails. 01. Yeah, that one right there. Okay. All right, members, we're back on the bill as amended, but before we do that, Chairman Wendell, would you like to be recognized? Okay. All right, we are back on the bill as amended, so Chair Lady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill, as amended, simply makes the statutory changes necessary for us to implement the budget. With that, I would move passage.
All right, members, you've heard the discussion of House Bill 2883, or you heard the description. Are there any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2883, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2883 moves to full finance. All right, that brings us to item number 3 on our calendar. Item number 3 is going to be House Bill 2886 by Chair Lady Hazelwood. We have a motion and a second. We also have an amendment that we need to put onto the bill. I have drafting code by Chair Lady Hazelwood 017002. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We have a motion and a second. You are recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendment does make the bill. This simply authorizes us, the state, to issue bonds. This is the bill that, again, it's part of the budget process every year. It includes bonding for, potential bonding for proceeds for the Department of Transportation should they have an issue in timing or that sort of thing with any of their construction, to the bonding for the proposed construction of a dome stadium is here, as and it cancels the bonds that were issued by Public Chapter 758 of 2020. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would renew my motion.
All right, Chair Lady. Thank you very much, members. You've heard the description on the amendment. Any discussion? Chairman Williams.
Thank you. I just had a quick question for the amendment. I noticed $83 million of this is for bonding of roads, I think, in the instance that the funding is not there. I guess the question for you is, how many times have you and I done this over the last several years?
Uh,
Every year, I suppose?
Every year. So at least this would be the 8th
Yeah.
for me.
So how many times have we actually issued the bonds for roads?
I believe that would be 0.
It is 0. I think it's important for the body and the members to know that we can authorize the issuance of bonds, but that does not mean we are in fact going to do so, much like we have for many, many years, at least since I've been here as it relates to roads. So, because we pay for our roads as we go in Tennessee. So thank you, Chairman and members.
Thank you, Chairman Williams. Further discussion? Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In this, as I understand it, is, as described, is the appropriation of, or permission for 500,000 or $500 million in bonds for this new stadium. And, just some points I'd like to make out. We had some folks that wanted to testify today, but they were actually not able to physically make the trip at the last minute. So I'm trying to read some things into the record if I could. I know that there's a claim that the neighborhood surrounding the stadium would create $29.5 billion of economic impact over a 30-year period, along with more than 19,000 jobs. But the state estimates also claim that Super Bowl, I guess that's 54 in 2020 in Miami, had a $571 million economic impact, and Super Bowl 52 in Minneapolis had a $450 million total economic impact. Victor Matheson, a sports economist at College of Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts, has studied the impact of large events such as World Cups and Super Bowls. And he said in February, while debunking a Nashville Convention and Visitors Corporation impact report for potential hosting bid for the World Cup, that Super Bowl impact reports often boast large numbers before the event, but the real numbers are closer to $30 million to $130 million of added economic activity. And that's the thing we don't normally get, is what is a real number after the fact. There's this bragging about what we're going to get, but those claims just simply do not pan out. The claims of the state report, like that of the prior World Cup report, were not independently funded, but instead come from those promoting the stadium, the team, or the event. Economic impact studies can be tricky, and so such raw numbers without much explanation should not be viewed credibly by anyone, said J.C. Bradbury, an economist from Kennesaw State University of Georgia. This is especially important given that stadium advocates often commission advocacy reports that are miraculously project large economic benefits that economists are never able to find after the fact. And I firmly believe that's exactly what we're facing here. The tax revenues that come directly from Titan Stadium related to spending, without accounting for the fact that much of that spending would have happened elsewhere in that same area. This is just reallocating spending. The state report also includes a stadium cost benefit analysis sheet that now estimates the bonds to have a 4% debt service that will ultimately cost the state about $710 million over 20 years. A fiscal note on that bill, and this is a little concerning, estimated that it would send $10 million annually to a special state account for the Davidson County Sports Authority. The cost benefit analysis, however, estimates the tax revenue from the mixed use campus would be about $13.8 million annually. So there's a discrepancy. They've even inflated numbers over and above what our own fiscal review folks have. So I don't support this portion of this bond issue, and just ask you to consider that the numbers that the real world sees with something like this just don't seem to match up with these paid for numbers that have been generated to support an idea like this. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Todd. Representative Ogles.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't have any comments on this.
Okay. All righty. All right, members, further discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, we're now voting on Amendment 017002 on to House Bill 2886. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are back on the bill as amended. Members, as always, if you want to be recorded as a no, just get the clerk's attention and she will get you down as such. All right, Chair Lady Hazelwood, we are back on the bill as amended. You are recognized.
And the amendment did make the bill, Mr. Chairman, so barring further questions, I would move passage.
All right, thank you very much. Members, any discussion on the bill, on House Bill 2886? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2886, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2886 moves to full finance. All right, that brings us to item number 4 on our calendar. Item number 4 is going to be House Bill 2884 by Chair Lady Hazelwood. Do we have a motion to second? We have a motion to second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2884 and the following bill are simply authorizing us to exceed the index of estimated growth. As those of you who've been around a while will recognize the Copeland cap. We are breaking through the Copeland cap. So this legislation, HB 2884, allows us to do that for budget years 21, 22. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would renew my motion.
All right, thank you, Chair Lady. Members, you've heard the description. Any discussion on House Bill 2884? Representative Ogles.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a question. It seems like since we haven't been here that long, but 4 years, it seems like we break this Copeland cap a lot. Is this something that is normal for the time of the General Assembly?
Chair Lady Hazelwood.
I think the answer to that is depends on what you describe as normal. The last several years have been very different and very abnormal. Our growth in revenues, it's been much larger than we're accustomed to for a longer period of time. Pardon me. So again, it is normal for this season that we are in.
Representative Ogles.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Further discussion on House Bill 2884. Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2884 moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2884 moves on to full finance. Brings us to item number 5. Item number 5 on our calendars, House Bill 2885 by Chair Lady Hazelwood. Do we have a motion to second? You have a motion to second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, as I mentioned, this is dealing with the Copeland cap just for budget years 22, 23, and it authorizes the index of appropriations from state tax revenues to exceed the estimated growth by 0.5%. With that, Mr. Chairman, I renew my motion.
All right, thank you, Chair Lady. Members, you've heard the description and discussion on House Bill 2885. Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2885, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2885 moves on to full finance. All right, members, that concludes our calendar on appropriations. Just a reminder that these bills will be up in full Finance Ways and Means Committee tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., which brings us to our second calendar. And again, just going to make this announcement again that these bills will also be up tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in the full Committee of Finance Ways and Means. So, all right. I know some of our members are probably glued to the monitor in their office, so we'll let them know to be moving this way. And we're going to take up, I know Chairman Hulsey is first, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to begin with number 1. And as I think Leader Lamberth is going to carry this one. So members, item number 1 is House Bill 2656. Again, it's going to be by Leader Lamberth. This was previously considered and placed behind the budget. Funding for this bill has now been secured, and it can now move out into full finance. So any objection to reconsidering our actions on House Bill 2656? Seeing none, House Bill 2656 is back before us. All right, item number 1 on our calendar is going to be House Bill 2656 by
Mr.
Leader
Chairman,
Lamberth.
we were debating as to which one was to go first here. Representative Hulsey had to step out and take a phone call. I'm signed on to the bill, so I'll do the initial presentation, and then any questions that are difficult in nature and extremely intricate, Representative Hulsey's agreed to take.
All right. Leader, let's get a motion and a second on the bill. You have a motion and a second. It looks like there is an amendment that actually writes the bill. So it's drafting code 017571.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct? Do we have a motion and a second on the amendment? We have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and get the amendment on again. Any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, seeing none. We're now voting on amendment 017571 onto House Bill 2656. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're back on the bill as amended. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I commend our Speaker Sexton, and the Lieutenant Governor for bringing a piece of legislation. I know Representative Hulsey and I for years have talked about the absolute horrible state of our criminal justice system. Folks get 10 years to serve and nobody can tell you what it means. For the crimes that are listed in this bill, like second-degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, criminally negligent homicide, vehicular homicide, that was a result of a DUI. I mean, some of these heinous crimes will be at 100%. So if someone gets 10 years, you know how long they're going to serve? 10 years. It's pretty simple. So I hope that goes out loud and clear that if you don't want to serve that kind of time, don't commit these crimes, period. And they have picked out some of the worst of the worst. There are a few other crimes that are still very, very harmful to our society, but they will be at a lower level at 90%, and you can only gain credit for educational, vocational, or substance abuse disorder programs within the prison system. That comes from some of the testimony that we heard, and those are reckless aggravated assault, aggravated robbery, aggravated burglary, reckless homicide, and vehicular homicide that was not the result of intoxication. I'll be honest, many of us wish that, all of these were 100%, but again, based on the input and testimony that came in, some of these were lowered down in that category. Mr. Chairman, that's what the bill does. I will tell you, as someone who's practiced law for almost 20 years, both as an assistant district attorney and in private practice, this absolutely will make Tennessee safer tomorrow than it is today. And it will be a much more straightforward system for both the defendants that find themselves in the criminal justice system, and particularly for the victims and their families that get lost in this process, where they are told 10 years in court, and then over and over and over again, they have to go beg a parole board to keep the killer of their family member many times in. It's just a horrible system, and this will be much better.
All right. Thank you, Leader, for this description. Members, any discussion on House Bill 2656? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2656, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2656 moves to full finance. All right, members, that brings us to item number 2 on our calendar. Item number 2 is going to be House Bill 1976 by Deputy Speaker Johnson. This was previously considered and placed behind the budget. Funding for this bill has now been secured, and it can move on to full finance. Any objection to reconsidering our actions on House Bill 1976? Seeing none, House Bill 1976 is back before us. Item number 2, House Bill 1976. That's all right. By Speaker Johnson. You have a motion to second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1976 exempts veterans of the United States Armed Forces who were trained and certified as a medic or a hospital corpsman from the initial licensure fee for the Emergency Medical Service Board.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 1976. Any discussion? Representative Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaker Johnson, I noticed this is a $200 fiscal note. Did you at any point think about paying this yourself?
I did.
What was that outcome in that internal conversation with yourself?
The chairman said that he'd
He's
prefer
funding
paying it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Speaker.
Any further discussion? Leader Camp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Speaker, for this bill. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. It's going to do a lot to help our veterans. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Leader Camper. Further discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 1976, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1976 moves to full finance.
Thank you, Mr.
Speaker.
Chairman, committee.
All right, that brings us to item number 3, House Bill 1981 by Speaker Marsh. Let's give him just a second. I know Speaker Marsh is here. He was just here and he stepped out. So we'll roll that without objection. We're going to roll that one spot. So without objection, rolled one spot. All right, let's go to item number 4. Item number 4 is House Bill 2573 by Chairman Doggett. This bill was previously considered and placed behind the budget. Funding for this bill has now been secured and it can move out of full finance. So any objection to reconsidering our actions on House Bill 2573? Seeing none, House Bill 2573 is back before us. Item number 4, House Bill 2573 by Chairman Doggett. We have a motion to second. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. What we're doing is we're adding a designation on the driver's license or identification ID cards that persons of this state might carry if they have been convicted of human trafficking, which will aid and assist law enforcement in their investigations.
All right, thank you very much, Chairman Doggett. Members, you've heard the description. Any discussion on House Bill 2573? Questions been called? Any objection to calling the question? Hearing none, seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2573, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2573 moves to full finance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, members, let's back up. Let's get item number 3. I thought we were going to have to pull Speaker Johnson out of the bullpen, but I see the starter showed up. All right, item number 3, House Bill 1981 by Speaker Pro Tem Marsh was previously considered and placed behind the budget. Funding for this bill has now been secured and it can move on to full finance. Any objection to reconsidering our actions on House Bill 1981? Seeing none, House Bill 1981 is back before us. Item number 3, House Bill 1981 by Speaker Pro Tem Marsh. You have a motion to second. You recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1981 codifies the use of ambulance operators and clarifies that a for-hire endorsement is not needed to operate an ambulance, as has been allowed by emergency rule and executive order. This legislation will codify the use of non-licensed and entry-level personnel to operate an ambulance as long as they're working toward getting their certification within the next year. I'll answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Speaker Marsh. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 1981. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 1981, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1981 moves to full finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, that brings us to item number 5, House Bill 2103 by Representative Alexander. This bill was previously considered and placed behind the budget. Funding for this bill has now been secured, and we can move it on to full finance. Any objection to reconsidering our actions on House Bill 2103? Seeing none, House Bill 2103 is back before us. Item number 5, House Bill 2103 by Representative Alexander. We have a motion to second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee. Can you hear me? Sorry. This bill does 3 things. It's for continuing education for funeral directors and embalmers and allows them to do the last 5 hours virtually, but it has to be in person, either virtually, but interactive.
Okay.
The second part is unlicensed funeral assistants or bad actors cannot be practicing in this state. And the third part is pre-need sales agents. It would eliminate the need for a licensed embalmer and or a licensed funeral director and a licensed pre-need salesman to have 2 licenses, because to operate a funeral home, you've got to have a license to begin with.
All right. Thank you very much, Representative Alexander, for this description. Members, any discussion on House Bill 2103? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2103, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2103 moves to full finance.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That brings us.
Any way you can, is he doing this bill? He's 8 and 9.
All right, members, we're on item number 6, House Bill 2802. This is going to be by Chairman Todd. This bill was previously considered and placed behind the budget. Funding for this bill has now been secured and it can move on to full finance. So any objection to reconsidering our actions on House Bill 2802? Seeing none, House Bill 2802 is back before us. Brings us to item number 6, which is House Bill 2802, and that's going to be by Chairman Todd. You have a motion and a second. You are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This expands the definition of a course of conduct for purposes of the offense of stalking to include one instance of placing an electronic tracking device on a person or in a person's property unless that device is placed by the direction of a law enforcement officer.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Todd. Members, you've heard the description. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2802, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2802 moves on to full finance. All right, that brings us to item number 7. Item number 7 is House Bill 2455 by Representative Hicks. This was previously considered and placed behind the budget. Funding for this bill has now been secured, and it can move out to full finance. So any objection to reconsidering our actions on House Bill 2455? Seeing none, House Bill 2455 is back before us. We are on item number 7, House Bill 2455 by Representative Hicks. You have a motion and a second. You recognize, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill addresses the instructor shortage for our CTE programs in our high schools. This bill adds that they can have 3 years of work experience in the last 5 years. House Bill 2455 also allows for industry certification from any state. This bill doesn't change anything about the requirements that they need to be enrolled in an educator preparation program if they haven't completed one, or they can provide proof of pairing with a highly effective mentor teacher and completion of coursework in classroom management, pedagogy, serving students with disabilities, English learners, the Teacher Code of Ethics, and from the State Board Approved Educator Preparation Program. So this bill is just to help make it a lot simpler to get CTE instructors in our vocational schools and our high schools.
All right. Thank you, Representative Hicks. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 2455. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2455, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2455 moves to full finance.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Committee.
Thank you. All right, members, that brings us to item number 8. And we are going to, without objection, we're going to roll item number 8 to the Hill without objection. Roll to the Hill brings us to item number 9. We're going to roll item number 9 without objection to the Hill. Any objection? Seeing none, roll to the Hill. That brings us to item number 10 on our calendar. Members, this is our addendum calendar. This is item number 10 is going to be House Bill 1201 by Chairman Whitson. You have a motion and a second, Chairman Whitson, and it looks like there is an amendment, drafting code, and this is by Chairman Williams. So Chairman Williams, let's make sure we got that drafting code right.
Thank you, Chairman. It's drafting code 017654.
That's what I have. We have a motion and second. You have a motion and a second. You're recognized on the amendment, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman and members. Thanks to Colonel Whitson for his efforts on this. He and I were contacted by several interested parties after local full last week regarding this bill. And so this amendment is to try to remedy some concerns that were had. And those two remedies would include the inclusion of C5s and C6s in the statute in the bill that was described last week. It only included 501c4s. This would include 501c5s and 6s as well. It also seeks to clarify that the notification of contributions and who is contributing money is not included in this legislation. That portion of the bill just seeks to clarify that because there were some concerns. This would only apply to expenditures over $5,000 per, With that, Chairman and members, I'm happy to answer any questions the members might have.
All right, thank you, Chairman Williams. Members, you've heard the description of the amendment 017654. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on the amendment to House Bill 1201. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're back on the bill as amended. Chairman Whitten, you're recognized on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, House Bill 1201 is what we call the Campaign Finance and Ethics Reform Act of 2022. It has been a hard work over the past 15 months with input from citizens, legal advisors, members of the House and Senate, and our leadership. First, I want to say the vast majority of members and our special interest groups follow the rules in regards to campaign reporting and activities. However, over the past year, we have discovered there are parts of the TCA that needs to be updated and changed to ensure disclosure of dark money, transparency in campaign activities, holding bad actors accountable, and responsive actions by our Overwatch agencies. Our intent is to increase public confidence and trust in the campaign process in regards to how campaigns are financed and how public officials and elected members are held accountable to the people of Tennessee. I appreciate the hard work and help of Chairman Williams and Representative Jernigan and our friends over the past year, and especially our legal staff and the House leadership in drafting this legislation. With that, Mr. Chairman, I renew my motion.
All right, thank you, Chairman Whitson. Members, you've heard the description on House Bill 1201. Any discussion? Representative Lynn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I've received a lot of communication. I think we all have on a section of this bill dealing with 501c4s that they feel it would inhibit them and silence their voice and really, take away their constitutional right to free speech. I've heard from groups such as the Americans for Tax Reform and the NRA, CPAC, the National Insurance Crime Bureau, and also ALEC. And, I serve on the board of directors of ALEC. And these groups have 501c4s. They do talk about issues. They oftentimes score legislators. And I know when I'm running for election, I want to use the scores of these groups on my campaign materials. And in fact, someone asked me, it was really funny. They said, would you use your F score from Planned Parenthood on your campaign materials? I said, I sure would. Absolutely. I'll put an F. I'll tell everybody Planned Parenthood gave me an F. But how do you answer that? Do you see this as limiting speech around an election by a 501c4? I know sometimes there's groups, they definitely say things that are hurtful, things that we don't like. I know that we all work hard and we try to give our constituents our message, and we work hard from them on constituent work. And they, after a while they get to know you and they know who you are. And even if a group said something extremely negative, it may not have an impact. But boy, they're sure impressed by my A rating from the NRA. I know that. And it's very meaningful to them. And if a lot of times NRA will send out a little orange postcard. And if they can't do that, that's what they've articulated to me, that it's going to keep them from doing something like that. And I don't want to throw a monkey wrench on the whole bill. This bill has a lot of good stuff in it, and I respect the sponsors of this bill immensely. It's just this one little section that, when I hear from so many of my friends, I get concerned. So how do you answer that, Mr. Sponsor?
Colonel Whitson.
Well, thank you for that question, my good friend. And I have enjoyed working with you over the years on some tough issues, and we've stood together. First of all, this does not change at all anything that 501c4s can do in regards to their information and sharing facts and stuff. It's just 60 days before a campaign, a primary or general election, is if they spend an aggregate of $5,000 or more disseminating information that has the likeness of a person or their name, they are to, if they're operating like a PAC, they just need to report like a PAC. Just their expenditures, not their contributions. So we do not limit them in anything what they can say or do in that regard that they've always done. The whole purpose is to capture active political communications, particularly dark money, occurring near an election with a substantial amount of money has been paid. Anything, it could be from $5,000 to $1 million to influence a campaign.
Representative Lynn.
And that, your description there certainly sounds reasonable. It absolutely sounds reasonable. And I know the bill has evolved and changed a lot. And, you know, I wouldn't want them not to be able to send something out. And also I wouldn't want to not be able to use their scores or whatever on my campaign materials, because I will put on my campaign materials, you know, I got an award from CPAC this year. I will put that on there as, you know, motivation to my voters to please push the button for me. So are you telling me that in that 60 days around an election, that they still would be able to send out information on their scores if they're not being silenced, but they do have to disclose how much money they spent doing that, not necessarily who gave them the money?
A 50, yes, if
You're
a
recognized.
501c4 sent out a picture of you 60 days before a primary or a general election with your picture and say, you know, Chairman Lynn supports us 100%. She's a great advocate for Second Amendment rights. And that would classify if they spent more than $5,000. But let's say they spent $5,000 on you and for my A rating and Chairman Bond's rating, that would exceed the $5,000. And they would just have to disclose that they spent $15,000 promoting campaign activities for us.
Representative Lynn. Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do know that the bill has evolved, and maybe that's not as scary to our many friends now, and maybe that addresses their concerns. So thank you so much.
And
Chairman
again,
Whitson.
and we do take their concerns seriously, and we're going to take a look at them.
Thank you.
Chairman Williams.
Thank you. Just had a quick question for Colonel Whitson. Colonel, do you think that your ability to communicate with your voters in your district is impugned at all by having to report what monies you spend?
Colonel.
No, not at all. And fortunately, this year I won't have to spend that much money. I don't know if I'm going to hit the $5,000 threshold or not.
I think, thank you, Colonel. I think the point we're trying to make is all we're asking people to do is a report. We're not telling them they can't communicate with their vendors. We're not telling them they can't get involved in campaigns. We're simply saying 60 days prior to an election, just like we have to do, you just have to report it over. If it's over $5,000, we have to report every expenditure. And this would just require them to report on those items that are above $5,000 or those single items that are above $5,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Whitson.
I renew my motion.
All right, Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess I have a question just for clarification. So a PAC is a political action committee, and they are for political purposes. But a C4 generally is an advocacy type organization. Is that correct?
Colonel Whitson.
Yes, that is. That's a information, nonprofit information, disseminate information.
Chairman Todd.
Is that generally, would you say organizations that have a membership, like some kind of something they belong to?
Chairman Whitson.
Yes, I would say most of them do have memberships, members that they routinely communicate with.
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm just thinking, I'm kind of wondering why they're in this bill. As Representative Lynn mentioned, it seems a little odd from the standpoint of in the political arena that if an organization is just communicating with their membership, which they pay dues with, whatever, that just seems a little more different to me, than a PAC, which is for political purposes, where C4, as you said, is for an advocacy purpose. I just find it a little odd. So can you help me understand why they're put into this? Well, give me some examples of something that maybe this is trying to fix.
Colonel Whitson.
Yes. Well, first of all, 501c4s cannot say at any time, vote for Chairman Todd or vote against Chairman Todd. They can say Chairman Todd can advocates this position, or we support his actions over the past year to support Second Amendment rights, or rights for, say, dogs or cats or anything like that. And so what we've had over the past year is 501c4s will put a likeness of a candidate or their name in a negative tone to try to influence elections 60 days before the primary or the general election. And that's basically active campaigning. Again, this is nothing new. It's they have to report this also within federal law also. So we're just trying to replicate federal law, but we're dropping it down to a threshold of $5,000.
Chairman Todd.
Last question. So this is mimicking and not putting any other restriction other than the threshold than what the federal law is for C4s.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Ogles.
Thank you, Chairman. Is the $5,000 cumulative, or is that per expenditure, that threshold?
Yes, Representative, that is an aggregate amount for the 60 days prior to the election.
Representative Ogles.
Thank you. That was my only question.
All right, further discussion on House Bill 1201. All right, further discussion. Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 1201, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1201 moves to full finance. All right, members, we are back on item number 8. Item number 8 is House Bill 2261 by Representative Jernigan. It was previously considered and placed behind the budget. Funding for this bill has now been secured and it can move on to full finance.
Okay.
Any objection to reconsidering our actions on House Bill 2261? Seeing none, House Bill 2261 is back before us. Item number 8, House Bill 2261 by Representative Jernigan. You have a motion to second. You are recognized, sir.
Okay. Chairman, thank you for your patience. I thought we were going to be here tomorrow, and I was halfway home. And I borrowed Daniel's coat from the clerk's office. It's huge.
Representative, you can't hardly tell.
I don't have my glasses with me. Okay, thank you. Members, House Bill 2261 it was brought to me by the Tennessee Hospitality Association and worked with the ABC. This bill does 5 things. It synchronizes businesses' licenses. So this provision will allow a licensee to synchronize, thank you, appreciate that, multiple establishments. So if a licensee has more than one, they can renew their license at one time. The second point is electronic verification. In addition to the paperwork that's put up, that when they come in, they're allowed to store all their information electronically, so they'll be able to show their licenses electronically. The third point is notification of catered events. Starting in 2023, caterers shall give a 2-day notice in a form developed by the commission. That notification will be transmitted electronically, and the commission can confirm with the receipt of notification. The fourth point will allow wholesalers to deliver directly to a site instead of going to the restaurant and then to the site. So it's for catering as well. And the last one is a notification of violation to the owner. So when applying to renew a license, the ABC, they'll list the name and the email of the licensee. That way, they get the notification of a violation and not just going to a restaurant and the bartender gets it and drops it and never gets to them. So those are the 5 points that we have and that we've worked with the Hospitality Association, the ABC, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Representative Jernigan, for this description. Members, any discussion on House Bill 2261? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2261, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2261 moves to full finance. Brings us to item number 9. Item number 9 is House Bill 1999 by Representative Jernigan. It was previously considered and placed behind the budget. Funding for this bill has now been secured, and it can move on to full finance. So any objection to reconsidering our actions on House Bill 1999? Seeing none, House Bill 1999 is back before us. Item number 9 is House Bill 1999 by Representative Jernigan. Do we have a motion and a second? You have a motion and a second. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. This bill directs the Tennessee Board of Pharmacy to promulgate rules that will ensure that individuals who are visually impaired will have appropriate access to prescription labels related to the materials appropriate to their needs. With that explanation, I'll happy to take any questions.
All right. Thank you very much, members. You've heard the description of House Bill 1999. Any discussion? Seeing none, question's been called. Objection, calling the question. Hearing none, seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 1999, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1999 moves to full finance.
Chairman, thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, members, we're now moving to our constitutional amendment calendar. And just as a reminder, calendar 2, again, will be taken up in the morning at 9 a.m. here in House Hearing Room 1 in full finance. All right, constitutional amendment. Again, let me say this announcement. Any bills coming out of this calendar will also be taken up. If I can talk, the later we get, the worse I get. Constitutional amendment calendar will also be taken up at 9 a.m. in the morning as well. So that will be in full finance in the morning, 9 a.m. constitutional amendment calendar. All right, members, item number 1, HJR 0003. I've got a request to take this bill off notice. So without objection, so moved. Off notice. Brings us to item number 2. Item number 2 is SJR 0055 by Representative Reedy. You have a motion to second, sir. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Of course, what we're doing here is a cleanup of the Constitution. It proposes amendments to remove Article 9, Section 1 of the Constitution of Tennessee, which provides that no minister of the gospel or priest of any denomination whatsoever shall be eligible to a seat in either house of the legislature.
All right. Thank you very much, Representative Reedy. Members, you've heard the description. Any discussion on SJR 55? Seeing none, we are now voting on SJR 55, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. SJR 55 moves to full finance. Thank you, Representative. All right, members, that brings us to item number 3. Item number 3 on our calendar is HJR 715 by Okay, let's try that again. Item number 3 is HJR. It is a long day, I'm telling you. Item number 3 is going to be HJR 715 by Chair Lady Hazelwood. You have a motion to second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a resolution proposes to amend Article 2, Section 31 of the Tennessee Constitution and would allow the investment of state funds in equities and stocks. Currently, the Constitution prohibits the state from investing in whole or in part in any bank or stockholder with others in any association, company, corporation, or municipality. Because of that, this means that the state can only invest its funds in debt instruments like bonds, notes, and treasury bills. As we have all seen what's happened with the stock market over the past few years, the prohibition can limit the return that the state would receive on the investments of its funds. And that in turn inhibits the state's ability to provide the needed services to its citizens. So this proposed language would just simply provide that state funds may be invested in equities with the adoption of an investment policy that would be developed by the governing body of the state governing body or state official charged with carrying out the purposes or objectives. It has truly been a long day of the fund or trust administered by the state. And the policy would have to be approved by the state treasurer and also by the comptroller. And as you know, this is the first step in a long process. If this amendment is passed during this General Assembly, it would then need to be passed during the next General Assembly by 2/3 vote. And then it would be placed on the ballot for Tennessee citizens to vote on in the next gubernatorial election, which would be 2026. With that, Mr. Chairman, I stand ready for any questions.
All right. Thank you, Chair Lady Hazelwood. Members, you've heard the description of HJR 715. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on HJR 0715, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. HJR 715 moves on to full finance. And members, just a reminder, that calendar, constitutional amendment calendar, will be, those bills that just came out will be taken up tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. All right. That brings us up to the TASER calendar. All right, members, thank you for your patience. The TASER calendar, which we're about to take up, now these bills will come up next week in the full Finance, Ways and Means Committee. So again, the TASER calendar will be next week, the bills that come out. All right, let's go to item number one. Item number one is House Bill 2419, and we're going to go to Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Chairman and members. I had an opportunity to speak with Representative Manis regarding this request for TASER study. As I said earlier in Finance Sub, when Representative Sparks was here regarding his study, I spoke with Representative Manis. This body was hoping to send only 2 studies to TASER this year. This was Representative Manis's was not one of them. However, as I have the great honor of showing up here to serve on TASER when you guys are at home, I have spoken with Dr. Clifford, and I think we'll be able to do those. But we were only going to send 2 out that were endorsed. So after speaking with Representative Manis, he requested to take this bill off notice.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Williams. And members, you've heard the request. So without objection, House Bill 2419 is off notice. Without objection. So moved. All right. That brings us to item number 2. Oh, Representative Ogles.
Thank you, Chairman. And this may be a question for Representative Williams. How did we come up with the number 2 this year? I know in previous years there's been as many as 4 studies. Is that just, do we wait what they're already working on versus the county, or how do we subjectively come up with a number? That's my question. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman Williams.
Thank you. Thank you. I got confused there.
Well, I don't want to get too much in debating of when we got items. Representative Ogles, you've got a bill. You want to hold up and we'll get you and you can ask that question. It's really weird having a discussion when there's nothing really to discuss because that bill's already moved on and taken off notice. So I don't want to just be out talking in thin air. I think we do that enough. All right. Item number 2 is House Bill 2278. I didn't see. Oh, there he is. Well, let's do. So it's Chairman Wendell. All right. You have a motion to second on House Bill 2278 by Chairman Wendell. Sir, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, members, Knoxville is the 7th largest city in America without passenger rail traffic. Nashville's the 3rd. Tennessee is the most underserved state in America for lack of passenger rail traffic. and this simply provides an avenue for TASER to study this issue. And I appreciate your support. And for full clarification, Representative Powell, the good father he is, had to pick up his son from school, so he's not here, and I'm the substitute.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Wendell. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 2278. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2278, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2278 moves to full finance. All right, that brings us to item number 3 on our calendar. Item number 3 is going to be House Bill 2761, and that is by Representative Reedy. Do we have a motion to second? We have a motion and a second. We have a motion and second on House Bill 2761. Representative Reedy, you're recognized. Looks like there's an amendment that rewrites the bill drafting code 017244. Is that correct, sir?
That is correct, sir.
All right, let's get this amendment on. You have a motion to second on the amendment. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, we're now voting on drafting code 017244 onto House Bill 2761. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're back on the bill as amended. And sir, you are recognized.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, of course, this come through the Agriculture Committee. What's important is landowners are being approached with lease agreements to transition agriculture land into solar facilities, and very few laws exist to protect landowners from exploitation damages and unexpected monetary losses of these solar companies that are coming to them. So therefore, the TASER study, hopefully we will have some information to share with all property owners to find out if it's something that they really want or need to do, or especially the state of Tennessee, the movement that we're going with green energy. And with that, Mr. Chairman, answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Representative Reedy. Members, you've heard the description of House Bill 2761. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2761, moving on to full finance. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2761 moves to full finance. All right, that brings us to item number 4. Item number 4 is 2729 by Representative Ogles. You have a motion to second. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. This would instruct TASER to do a comprehensive study of the 911 and reporting of crime on college campuses. And I want to thank Chairman Curcio's office. He had 2 interns that audited all the universities in the state of Tennessee. And what they found is we have somewhat of a discombobulated system. Some schools say call 911 if a crime's been committed. Others have a security office number. Others have instruct the students to call a Title IX office. And some, there's also actually numbers for the security personnel on staff at that time. And the trouble with this is there's not a uniform standard across Tennessee for all our universities. And with the crime on college campuses being extremely low in reporting, as I said earlier, only 5% of sexual crimes on our campuses across the United States are actually reported. We just, I'd like there to be sure that there's discovery and retention of those calls, and there's some kind of data trail. And with that, I'll take any questions.
All right. Thank you, Representative Ogles. Members, you've heard the description. Any discussion? Chairman Williams.
Thank you. Obviously, I sound like a broken record. I hope the representative asked me a question earlier. We'll try to answer it. The answer to the question you had is the members, the chairman of the finance committees looked to see, based upon whatever it was, they felt comfortable as far as endorsing the number of, and we picked a number, so we didn't have to pick the actual bills, and then we prioritized them based on that. As I told you on the House floor on Monday night, though, and as I've seen you work over the past several years as it relates to crime prevention, and as you well know, before you were even elected a member, we talked a lot about the TBI report and its reporting as it relates to different things, and particularly and crime in our schools. And so the goal is to talk to Dr. Lippert as a member of TASER, to encourage him, exhort him to do this. It's just that the members of this committee have chosen to pick the 2, just like we did in the previous calendar with constitutional amendments. That was based upon what the Secretary of State would give us as far as a budget to do, which is usually what's done. And so much like I said, of which earlier today, as it relates to Sparks, and I communicated with you on the floor on Monday night, obviously there are a couple of options. We can I can make a motion, send it to summer study. You can take it off notice, but either way, I'm going to advocate to ask the TASSER to study this because I do think you make some great points as the importance of it. With that, Chairman, I'm going to defer back to my colleague and ask him which he'd rather do. If not, I'll make a motion to send to summer study.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Williams.
Yes.
Representative Ogles.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm at the will of the committee.
Thank you, Representative Ogles. Further discussion?
Hmm.
Chairman Williams.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Ogles. I recognize your desire to do that. So, Chairman, I make a motion to send House Bill 2729 to summer study.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. The motion is properly before us. Any discussion on the motion to send to summer study? Seeing none, we're now voting on the motion to send House Bill 2729 to summer study. All those in favor say aye. All those
Aye.
opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2729 to summer study. All right. Give us just a second to make sure we have everything taken care of. All right, members, that concludes the business that we had today. Do we have any further business coming before the committee? Seeing none, any objection to adjourning? Seeing none, we stand adjourned.